The market square of Thornwick had never seen so many soldiers. Elowen noticed them first by their shadows, long dark shapes that cut across the cobblestones like blades. Then came the sound of hooves, dozens of them, thundering through the village gates with a precision that made the merchants abandon their stalls and the children stop their games. "Ellie, what's happening?" Brielle tugged at her sister's sleeve, rising on her toes to peer through the gathering crowd. At 12 years old, she was all curiosity and no caution, a combination that had given Elowen more gray hairs than any woman of 23 deserved. "Stay close to me." Elowen pulled her sister against her side, her heart beginning to pound as the first riders entered the square. They wore black leather armor marked with a symbol she had only seen in whispered stories. A silver wolf mid-howl beneath a crescent moon. The sigil of the Northern Territories. The mark of the wolf clans. Impossible. The wolf clans never came this far south. They kept to their mountain fortresses, their wild forests, and their ancient ways. In all her years, Elowen had never seen one in the flesh. Until now. The crowd pressed backward as the riders formed a perimeter around the square. Elowen found herself pushed toward the front, Brielle's hand clutched tightly in her own. She could feel the fear rippling through the villagers, could taste it on her tongue like copper. Then the crowd fell utterly silent. A single rider emerged from the formation. Unlike the soldiers in their black armor, this man wore deep charcoal trimmed with silver thread that caught the afternoon light. He sat astride a massive black stallion as if he had been born in the saddle, his bearing so commanding that Elowen forgot to breathe. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair that fell past his collar and a face that seemed carved from stone. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and a mouth set in a line that suggested he rarely smiled. But it was his eyes that made her stomach clench. Even from this distance, she could see they were pale gray, the color of winter storms. "Citizens of Thornwick." His voice carried across the square without effort, deep and resonant. "I am here on behalf of the Northern Alliance." Elowen heard gasps around her. The Northern Alliance. The coalition of wolf clans that had been at war with the southern kingdoms for generations. What business could they possibly have in a border village like Thornwick? "Your lord has fled," the stranger continued, and Elowen noticed for the first time that Lord Corvain was nowhere to be seen. He abandoned his people rather than face the consequences of his actions. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Corvain had been their overlord for 5 years, ever since he had married Elowen's mother and claimed their family estate after her death. A cruel man with crueler appetites, but he had always seemed untouchable. "I have come to assure you that the Northern Alliance bears no quarrel with common folk." The stranger's gaze swept across the assembled villagers. "We seek only those who participated in the raids upon our border settlements. Those who slaughtered our people under cover of darkness." "Raids?" Elowen frowned. She had heard rumors, of course. Whispers about soldiers disappearing in the night, about Corvain's private militia conducting secret missions. But she had never imagined. "Your cooperation will be rewarded with protection," the stranger said. "The Northern Alliance honors its promises. You have my word that no innocent soul in this village will be harmed." And then it happened. The sensation started as a buzzing at the base of her skull, familiar and unwelcome. Heat prickled behind her eyes. Before Elowen could clamp her hand over her mouth, before she could swallow the word rising in her throat like bile, it escaped. "Liar." The word was barely above a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the square, it might as well have been a scream. Every head turned toward her. Every eye found her face, and the stranger on horseback, the man whose promise she had just publicly challenged, slowly shifted his winter-gray gaze until it locked onto hers. Elowen's blood turned to ice. "No, no, 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 not here, not now, not in front of everyone." The gift, the curse she had spent her entire life hiding, had betrayed her at the worst possible moment. She could sense lies the way others could sense heat or cold, an involuntary reaction that she usually managed to control. But something about this man's words had triggered it so violently that her body had responded before her mind could intervene. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion. The crowd parted before him like water, leaving a clear path directly to where Elowen stood frozen with Brielle pressed against her side. "Ellie." Brielle's voice was tiny, terrified. "Ellie, what did you do?" "Run!" Elowen's instincts screamed, but her legs refused to obey. She could only watch as the stranger approached, each footfall measured and deliberate. He stopped less than an arm's length away. Up close, she could see that his gray eyes held flecks of something darker, something that seemed to shift and swirl in their depths. "What did you call me?" His voice was soft now, almost gentle, but Elowen heard the steel beneath it. I didn't mean—" The words died in her throat. "Lie," her gift whispered. "Tell him you said nothing. Tell him he misheard." But when she opened her mouth to do exactly that, different words came out. "You were lying." Her voice trembled, but it did not waver. "When you said no innocent would be harmed, you were not telling the whole truth." A current of intensity arced between them. Surprise, perhaps, or something hungrier. "And how?" he murmured, leaning closer until she could smell pine and wood smoke on his skin. Would a village healer know such a thing? He knew what she was. Somehow, impossibly, he knew. Elowen saw it in the way his pupils dilated, the way his nostrils flared slightly as if he was drawing in her scent. "Your eyes," she breathed, because they were no longer gray. They were molten gold, bright as coins in the sunlight. "Now you see," he said softly. Then he straightened and addressed the crowd, his voice once again carrying across the square. "This woman has accused me of falsehood before witnesses." His tone was formal now, ritualistic. "By the ancient laws of my people, she has two choices. She may prove her accusation true, or she may submit to my judgment." "Please." The words scraped from Elowen's throat. "My sister. She has no one else. I am all she has." The stranger looked down at Brielle, who was crying silently against Elowen's hip. A shadow crossed his features before his expression hardened again. "Then you should have guarded your tongue more carefully." He turned to his soldiers. "Bring her." Hands seized Elowen's arms. She struggled, panic flooding through her as Brielle screamed her name. But the grip was iron, unyielding, and within moments she was being half-carried toward a waiting horse. "Brielle!" Elowen screamed. "Find the baker's wife. Tell her what happened. Brielle!" She saw her sister's face, pale and terrified, growing smaller as the distance between them increased. She saw the villagers standing motionless, too afraid to intervene. She saw the stranger mount his horse and turn toward her, those golden eyes burning into hers with an intensity that made her soul tremble. "You will ride with me," he said. It was not a request. Before Elowen could respond, she was lifted onto the stallion, her back pressed against his chest, his arms caging her on either side as he took the reins. His body was unnaturally warm, heat radiating through his clothes and into her skin. "Who are you?" she whispered. His breath was hot against her ear when he answered. "I am Theron," he said, "Alpha King of the Northern clans, and you, little truth speaker, have just made yourself very interesting to me." The horse surged forward, carrying Elowen away from everything she had ever known, toward a fate she could not imagine. They rode through the night. Elowen lost track of time somewhere between the second and third hour, her exhaustion blurring the moonlit landscape into an endless smear of silver and shadow. The only constant was the heat at her back, the iron cage of Theron's arms, the steady rhythm of his breathing against her hair. She had tried to stay rigid at first, holding herself as far from his body as the saddle would allow, but fatigue eventually won. By the time the stars began to fade toward dawn, she had sagged against his chest, too tired to care about dignity. He had not spoken a single word since they left Thornwick. "Where are you taking me?" She had asked the question a dozen times in those first hours. He had never answered. Now, as the sky lightened from black to gray, Eowyn tried again. "Please." Her voice was hoarse, scraped raw by cold air and unshed tears. "At least tell me where we are going." Silence stretched between them. Then his chest rumbled against her back as he spoke. "Home." One word. It told her nothing and everything at once. They crested a ridge just as the sun broke the horizon, and Eowyn gasped at what lay below. A fortress rose from the mountainside like a living thing, its towers carved from the very stone of the peaks. Waterfalls cascaded down sheer cliffs on either side, filling the valley with mist that caught the morning light and turned it to gold. "Verath Keep," Theron said against her ear, "seat of the northern kings for 1,000 years." It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. As they descended toward the massive gates, Eowyn saw wolves, dozens of them, ranging in color from silver to black, watching from the rocks above. Their eyes tracked the rider's approach, with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. "They will not harm you." Theron's voice held a trace of amusement. "Unless I command it." "That is not reassuring," Eowyn muttered before she could stop herself. A sound escaped him, low and rough. It took her a moment to realize it was laughter. The gates groaned open as they approached, revealing a courtyard filled with people. Warriors in black leather, servants in gray wool, nobles in fine furs, all stopping to stare as their Alpha King rode through with a strange woman pressed against his chest. Eowyn felt their eyes like physical weights. She heard whispers spreading through the crowd, words in a language she did not recognize, though their tone needed no translation: suspicion, hostility, fear. Theron dismounted first, then reached up to lift her down. His hand spanned her waist easily, his grip firm but not painful as he set her on the cobblestones. Her legs buckled immediately, and he caught her before she could fall. "Easy." That single word again, spoken low enough that only she could hear. "You have been riding for 8 hours. Your body needs time." Eowyn pushed against his chest, desperate to put distance between them, but her muscles refused to cooperate. She was forced to cling to his arm like a vine to a wall, her cheeks burning with humiliation. "My lord." A woman approached, tall and silver-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "We were not expecting your return until the new moon." "Circumstances changed, Marin." Theron's hand remained on Eowyn's waist, steadying her. "This woman is to be given quarters in the East Tower. She is not to leave until I say otherwise." "A prisoner, then?" Marin's gaze swept over Eowyn with cold assessment. "What is her crime?" "She called me a liar." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wolves in the courtyard seemed to still, their ears pricked forward with sudden interest. Marin's expression shifted with something Eowyn could not read. "My lord, the ancient laws demand—" "I know what the laws demand." Theron's voice hardened. "I will deal with her according to custom, in my own time." He released Eowyn's waist and stepped back. The sudden absence of his warmth made her shiver despite the morning sun. "Take her," he said to Marin. "See that she is fed and given clean clothing. I will summon her when I am ready." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing through a doorway without looking back. Marin studied Eowyn with unreadable eyes. "You are either very brave or very foolish," she said finally. "Perhaps both. Come with me." Eowyn followed on unsteady legs, Marin's words echoing in her mind. The ancient laws demand. What did that mean? What punishment awaited someone who publicly accused an Alpha King of lying? She had a terrible feeling she was about to find out. The East Tower room was a prison dressed in silk. Fine tapestries covered the stone walls, depicting wolves running beneath moonlit skies. A massive bed dominated one corner, draped in furs so thick Eloan's hand disappeared when she touched them. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to roast an ox, filling the chamber with warmth and flickering shadows. But the door had no handle on the inside. And when Eloan tried the windows, she found iron bars hidden behind the heavy curtains. A gilded cage, she whispered to herself, is still a cage. Servants had come and gone throughout the day, bringing food she could not eat and clothing she refused to wear. They spoke to her in the northern tongue, their eyes never quite meeting hers, their hands trembling slightly as they performed their duties. They were afraid of her, she realized, or perhaps afraid of what she represented. By the time darkness fell beyond her barred windows, Eloan had explored every inch of her prison. She had found no weaknesses, no escape routes, and no hope. She was sitting on the floor before the fire, her knees drawn to her chest, when the door finally opened. Theron entered without announcement, still wearing the same riding clothes from that morning, his dark hair windswept and wild. He dismissed the guard who had unlocked the door with a single gesture, then closed it behind him with a sound that echoed like a death knell. They stared at each other across the fire-lit chamber. "You have not eaten." He nodded toward the untouched trays on the table. "Nor changed your clothes." "I am not hungry." Eloan lifted her chin. "And I will not dress myself in your silks like a doll for your amusement." "My amusement?" He moved deeper into the room, circling her the way a predator circles wounded prey. "You think I brought you here to amuse me?" "I think you brought me here to punish me for speaking truth." Her voice shook, but she refused to look away. "So punish me and be done with it. I have a sister who needs me." Theron stopped directly in front of her, forcing Eloan to crane her neck to maintain eye contact. This close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the tension in his jaw, and the shadows beneath those pale eyes. "You do not understand what you did," he said quietly. "What you are." "I am a healer." The words came automatically, the same lie she had told her entire life. Nothing more. "Liar." The word struck her like a physical blow. Eloan flinched backward, her pulse slamming against her ribs. "You can sense falsehood," Theron continued, crouching before her so their faces were level. "I watched your eyes when I spoke in the square. I saw the moment the truth hit you, saw you fight to contain it. You have been hiding this gift for years, I think. But you could not hide it from me." "How?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I can smell it on you." His nostrils flared, and his eyes flickered gold for just an instant. "Your power has a scent, little truth speaker, like lightning before a storm. I noticed it the moment I entered the square." Eloan pressed herself back against the stone wall, her breath coming in short gasps. "What are you?" "You know what I am." He rose to his full height, towering over her. "You saw my eyes. You saw my wolves. You have heard the stories all your life." Shifter. The word surfaced from childhood nightmares, from whispered warnings around winter fires, the wolf people of the north. Monsters who wore human skin. "The stories say your kind eat children," Eloan breathed, "that you bathe in blood beneath the full moon, that you—" "Stories." Theron's lip curled with contempt. "Lies told by southern kings to justify their slaughter of my people." Something in his tone made her pause. Pain, buried deep beneath layers of ice, but present nonetheless. "The raids," she said slowly, her gift stirring even now. "The ones you accused Lord Corvain of conducting. What really happened?" Theron was silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat, empty of emotion. 3 months ago, Soldiers wearing no colors attacked a village at our southern border. They killed everyone. Men, women, children. They burned the bodies and salted the earth. His hands clenched at his sides. 47 people. My people. Elowin's throat tightened. And you believe Corvain was responsible? I know he was. We captured one of his men. Theron's eyes met hers, and she saw something ancient and terrible in their depths. He confessed before he died. Before he died. Elowin did not ask how. I came to Thornwick seeking justice, Theron continued. The coward fled before I could take him. But you. He crouched before her again, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. You called me a liar in front of witnesses. You challenged my honor before my own soldiers. Among my people, such an accusation cannot go unanswered. Then answer it. Elowin forced steel into her voice despite her terror. What happens now? What do your ancient laws demand? Theron studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze, refusing to show weakness. Our laws offer two paths, he said finally. The first is trial by combat. You would face me in the arena, and only death would satisfy the debt. Elowin's blood chilled. And the second? The second. He paused, and his mask slipped for just an instant, revealing something that almost looked like hunger. The second is claiming. Claiming? She did not recognize the word, but something in his tone made her pulse quicken. If the accused accepts, the offended party may claim them as their own. Body, blood, and soul, bound together until death. Elowin stared at him, certain she had misheard. You mean marriage? Marriage is a human word. Theron's voice dropped lower, rougher. This is something far older, far deeper, a bond that cannot be broken by any power on earth. That is insane. Elowin scrambled to her feet, pressing herself flat against the wall. I called you a liar. One word. And your solution is to bind me to you forever? You spoke truth. Theron rose with her, matching her movement. That is what makes this complicated. Complicated? Her voice pitched higher. How is any of this complicated? I was right. You were lying when you said no innocent would be harmed. Theron's jaw tightened. I was not lying. I was withholding. Withholding what? The truth about what I intended to do to Corvain once I found him. His eyes blazed gold again, and when he spoke, his voice had dropped to something barely human. I was going to tear him apart with my bare hands and scatter his pieces across the mountain for the crows. Elowin's gift stirred, confirming every word. He meant it. Every brutal, bloody syllable. That is not the same as harming innocents, she managed. No. Theron stepped closer, and she had nowhere left to retreat. But you sensed the violence in my intent. Your gift read the darkness in me, and it reacted. He was right. God's helper? He was right. She had sensed something beneath his polished words, something savage and hungry, and her power had responded before her mind could intervene. I cannot let you go. His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. Not with what you know. Not with what you are. So those are my choices? Elowin laughed, the sound brittle and hollow. Die in combat against a creature twice my size, or bind myself to you for eternity? There may be another way. He reached toward her face, and she flinched, but his touch was feather-light, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. Your gift. It reacted to me because you sensed something I was hiding. Perhaps if you can prove what I withheld was justified, you would release me? I would consider it. Elowin searched his eyes, her gift probing for deception. She found none. He was telling the truth, or at least a version of it. And my sister? She pressed. Brielle is alone in Thornwick with no one to protect her. His expression shifted. He withdrew his hand and stepped back, creating distance between them. "I have already sent riders," he said. "Your sister will be brought here under my protection." Eowyn's breath caught. "You... what?" "She is 12 years old and alone in a village that just watched her sister be taken by wolves." His tone was matter of fact, but she sensed something deeper beneath. "Whatever else happens between us, she does not deserve to suffer for your actions." Before Eowyn could respond, before she could thank him or question his motives, he turned and strode toward the door. "Wait." The word escaped her before she could stop it. Theron paused, his hand on the door frame, but did not turn around. "What you said about the claiming bond." Eowyn swallowed hard. "If I chose that path, what would it mean? What would happen to me?" He was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, strained. "You would become mine, in every way that matters." He glanced back at her over his shoulder, and his eyes were fully gold now, blazing like twin suns. "And I would become yours." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a sound like fate sealing itself shut. Eowyn sank to the floor, trembling, her mind reeling with everything she had learned. Shifters were real. She was a prisoner of their king. Her gift had betrayed her. And somewhere in the darkness of this ancient fortress, a man with wolf's eyes was waiting to see what she would choose: death or belonging, combat or claiming. She pressed her hands to her face and wept. 3 days passed in the East Tower. Eowyn measured time by the movement of shadows across her floor, by the meals that arrived with clockwork precision, by the distant howls that echoed through the mountains each night. She had finally begun eating, if only to maintain her strength. She had even donned one of the simpler dresses left for her, a deep green wool that reminded her of the forests around Thornwick. But she had not seen Theron since that first night. His absence should have been a relief. Instead, it gnawed at her like a splinter beneath skin. She found herself listening for his footsteps in the corridor, her pulse jumping at every sound beyond her door. "Foolish," she muttered to herself, pacing before the fire. "He is your captor, not your—" She could not finish the thought. On the 4th morning, the door opened to reveal not servants, but Marin, the silver-haired woman from the courtyard. "The Alpha requests your presence," Marin said. Her tone suggested this was not optional. Eowyn followed her through corridors carved from living rock, past tapestries depicting battles between wolves and men, until they emerged into a vast hall filled with morning light. Theron sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by warriors who fell silent the moment she entered. But Eowyn barely noticed them. Brielle, her sister, sat beside Theron, looking small but unharmed, a half-eaten pastry in her hand. The moment she saw Eowyn, she launched herself across the hall. "Ellie!" Brielle slammed into her with enough force to steal her breath. "They said you were safe, but I had to see for myself. Are you hurt? Did they treat you well? The wolves that came for me were so big, but they didn't hurt me, and the lady with the braids gave me honey cakes on the journey, and—" "Breathe, little one." Eowyn clutched her sister tight, tears streaming down her face. "I am well. I am well." Over Brielle's head she met Theron's gaze. He watched them with an unreadable expression, but she saw the slight softening around his eyes. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He inclined his head, just a fraction. "Your sister has been telling us interesting stories," Theron said aloud, and something in his tone made Eowyn's blood chill. "About your grandmother, about the gifts that run in your bloodline." Eowyn's arms tightened around Brielle. "She is a child. She does not know what she speaks of." "She told me you can heal wounds with your touch." Theron rose from his seat, approaching them slowly. "That you once mended a shattered bone in seconds. That your mother could do the same before the fever took her." The hall had gone deathly silent. Elowen could feel the weight of dozens of eyes pressing upon her. Tales, she whispered. Fantasy. Nothing more. Theron stopped before her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Elowen. He spoke her name like a man tasting wine, savoring each syllable. I find I cannot stop saying it. It haunts my thoughts. It follows me into my dreams. His voice dropped lower. Show me your gift, Elowen. Prove that my obsession is not misplaced. Her name on his lips sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. She forced herself to focus. I cannot. There is a boy in our healing chambers. Theron's voice softened, but his gaze remained iron. 7 years old. He was injured in a training accident 3 days ago. The healers say he will not survive the week. Elowen's chest tightened. That is not my concern. No? Theron reached out and gently disentangled Brielle from her arms, passing the girl to Marin with a look that brooked no argument. Then let me make it your concern. Save the boy, and I will release you both. You can return to Thornwick and never see me again. The offer hung in the air between them like a blade. And if I cannot save him? Elowen asked. Then you will remain here. His eyes flickered gold. And we will discuss the claiming bond in greater detail. Elowen stared at him, her gift probing desperately for deception. She found none. He meant every word. Take me to him, she said. The healing chambers smelled of herbs and despair. On a small cot lay a dark-haired boy, his face pale as snow, his breathing shallow and labored. Bandages wrapped his torso, stained with blood that had long since dried. Internal injuries, the attending healer murmured, beyond our skill to mend. Elowen approached the cot, her hands trembling. She had not used her gift since her mother died, since the night she had tried to save her and failed. The memory of that failure haunted her still. But this was a child, an innocent boy, who had done nothing to deserve death. She placed her hands over his chest and closed her eyes. The warmth started in her heart, just as it always had. A gentle heat that spread through her veins, gathering in her palms until her skin glowed with soft golden light. She heard gasps around her, heard whispers in the northern tongue, but she blocked them out. The boy's injuries revealed themselves to her inner sight. Ruptured organs, internal bleeding, damage too severe for any mortal medicine, but not too severe for her. She poured her power into him, feeling the wounds close, the bleeding stop, the torn flesh knit together. It was like trying to hold water in her hands, exhausting and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. When she finally opened her eyes, the boy was breathing easily, color returning to his cheeks. And Theron was staring at her, as if she had hung the moon in the sky. What are you? He breathed. Before Elowen could answer, an explosion rocked the fortress. Chaos erupted through Verath Keep. Warriors rushed past the healing chambers, shouting in the northern tongue. The sound of clashing steel echoed from somewhere below. Theron's expression transformed from wonder to deadly focus in the span of a heartbeat. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the door. Protect the healer and the children. Wait! Elowen grabbed his arm. What is happening? Is Brielle safe? Your sister is with Marin in the Great Hall. She will be protected. He paused, looking down at her hand on his sleeve. A current of understanding arced between them, electric and unspoken. Do not leave this room. Whatever happens. Then he was gone, his footsteps thundering down the corridor. Elowen turned to find the attending healer gathering the younger patients, herding them toward a reinforced door at the back of the chamber. The boy she had just saved was sitting up now, confused, but alive. What is happening? Elowen demanded. Attack! The healer's face was grim. The southern forces, they must have followed you here. Guilt crashed through Elowen like a wave. This was her fault. Corvain had tracked her somehow, used her as bait to locate the Alpha King's stronghold. I have to find my sister. The Alpha commanded, but Elowen was already running. The corridors of Verath Keep had transformed into a battlefield. She pressed herself against walls, ducked through doorways, and followed the sounds of fighting toward the Great Hall. Twice she nearly collided with wolf-form shifters racing past, their massive bodies barely registering her presence as they threw themselves into combat. She found the Great Hall in ruins. The massive doors had been blasted inward, and soldiers in unmarked armor poured through the breach. Shifters in both human and wolf form fought desperately to hold the line, but they were outnumbered. In the center of the chaos, Elowen spotted Theron in full wolf form, a beast of silver and black fur larger than any horse, his jaws clamped around a soldier's throat. "Ellie!" Brielle's scream cut through the din of battle. Elowen spun to see her sister struggling in the grip of a soldier near a side entrance, Marin lying motionless on the ground beside them. "Brielle!" Elowen ran without thinking, without planning, driven by pure maternal fury. She slammed into the soldier from behind, clawing at his face, his eyes, anything she could reach. He released Brielle with a curse, spinning to backhand Elowen across the face. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood. The soldier loomed over her, raising his sword. Then a shape exploded from the shadows, and the soldier was gone, replaced by the massive silver wolf that had once been Theron. His jaws closed around the man's neck with a sickening crunch, and when he turned to face Elowen, his muzzle was painted red with blood. Their eyes met. Gold to green. Wolf to woman. Something profound shifted in that moment. Something that went beyond words, beyond understanding. Elowen felt it in her very bones, a connection snapping into place like a key turning in a lock. Then his eyes widened, fixed on something behind her. Elowen turned just in time to see Corvain stepping through the ruined doorway, a crossbow in his hands, aimed directly at her heart. "Hello, stepdaughter," he said. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." The bolt flew. But Theron was faster. He threw himself between Elowen and the projectile, taking the bolt deep in his shoulder. The impact knocked him sideways, and she watched in horror as he crashed to the ground, his wolf form shuddering, shrinking, until a naked and bleeding man lay in his place. "Theron!" Elowen crawled to his side, pressing her hands against the wound. The bolt was embedded deep, and she could see dark liquid weeping from around the shaft. Not just blood. Something else. Something wrong. "Poison!" Theron gasped, his face contorting with agony. "Silver and wolf's bane, run! I am not leaving you." Touching. Corvain's voice dripped with contempt. He advanced toward them, reloading his crossbow with casual precision. "The witch and the beast, united against the righteous. Your mother would be so disappointed, Elowen." "My mother would be disappointed in you." Elowen's voice shook with fury. "You murdered those people, the village at the border. Women, children. Necessary casualties in a holy war." Corvain raised the crossbow again. "And now, you will join them." A sound split the air. Not human, not animal. Something between. Something ancient and terrible. Wolves poured into the hall from every direction, dozens of them, surrounding Corvain and his remaining soldiers in a circle of gleaming teeth. "You are outnumbered," Elowen said. "Surrender." Corvain laughed. "You think these beasts frighten me? I have been killing their kind for 20 years. I know their weaknesses." He threw something to the ground, a small glass vial that shattered on impact. Purple smoke billowed outward, and the wolves nearest to him collapsed, writhing in agony as the vapor touched their fur. "A gift from the king's apothecary," Corvain said, backing toward the door. "The silver and wolf's bane, refined to perfection. One breath and their lungs begin to dissolve." Elowen looked at Theron, whose breathing had grown increasingly ragged. The poison was spreading. She could see the dark veins crawling up his neck, toward his heart. "Go," Theron commanded, his voice barely a whisper. Take your sister. Leave through the mountain passages. Marin will show you. I am not leaving you to die. You must. He reached up, his hand trembling, and touched her cheek with blood-stained fingers. Please. I cannot protect you like this. Then do not protect me. Elowen felt something breaking open inside her, something that had been locked away for years. Let me protect you. She placed her hands over his wound and called upon her gift. But this time, something was different. This time, when her power touched his, it did not simply heal. It merged. The golden light flowing from her palms met something inside Theron, something silver and wild, and the two energies wrapped around each other like rivers converging into one. Elowen felt his heartbeat as if it were her own, felt his pain, his fear, his desperate hope. And beneath it all, she felt his love, vast and consuming, a love that had recognized her the moment he saw her in that market square. What are you doing? Corvain's voice had risen in panic. What is that light? Elowen opened her eyes. The wound on Theron's shoulder was closing, the poison retreating, driven back by the combined force of their power. He rose to his feet, still naked, still bleeding, but his eyes were blazing gold and his voice rang across the hall like thunder. Take your men and run, Theron commanded. If I ever see your face again, I will tear you apart so slowly you will beg for the mercy of death. Corvain fled, and as the wolves gave chase, as the battle cries faded into the distance, Elowen collapsed against Theron's chest, her strength finally failing. You saved me, he murmured against her hair. Why? Because I could not let you die. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Because I think I... But the words would not come, and before she could force them out, darkness claimed her. Elowen woke alone. She recognized the East Tower room by the pattern of firelight on the ceiling, by the familiar weight of furs covering her body. But something was different. Something was wrong. Her body ached in ways she could not explain. Not pain exactly, but emptiness. As if some vital piece of herself had been torn away. Theron? His name escaped before she could stop it. Silence answered her. Elowen pushed herself upright, wincing at the hollow feeling in her chest. She remembered the battle, remembered healing Theron, and remembered the way their powers had merged into something terrifying and beautiful. And then, nothing. Brielle? She called, her voice hoarse. The door opened and Marin entered, a bruise purpling across her cheekbone but otherwise unharmed. Your sister is safe, Marin said, anticipating the question. She is with the other children in the protected wing. And Theron? Marin's expression flickered. The Alpha has withdrawn. He has not emerged from his chambers in 3 days. 3 days. Elowen had been unconscious for 3 days. I need to see him. That is not possible. Marin's voice carried an edge of something Elowen could not identify. The Alpha has given orders. No one is to disturb him, including you. Especially you. The unspoken words hung in the air between them. Why? Elowen demanded. What happened? The last thing I remember, You bonded with him. Marin's words fell like stones into still water. When you healed him, when your power touched his, you created a connection, a partial claiming bond. Elowen's blood chilled. I do not understand. How is that possible? He did not bite me. I did not. There are many forms of claiming. Marin moved to the window, her back to Elowen. A bite is the most common, the most controlled. But in moments of extreme emotion, when a shifter's mate is in mortal danger, the bond can form through other means. Mate. The word struck Elowen like a physical blow. You knew, she whispered. You all knew, from the moment he brought me here. The Alpha recognized you the moment he saw you in that village square. Marin turned to face her, and Eowyn saw something like pity in her gray eyes. Your scent, your power, your soul, they called to him. That is why your accusation struck so deeply. You were not just any stranger calling him a liar. You were his fated mate, rejecting him before the bond could even begin. The revelation crashed through Eowyn like a wave. Every interaction, every heated look, every moment of inexplicable connection suddenly made sense. But he said nothing. What could he say? You were terrified. You saw him as a monster, a captor. He hoped that by keeping his distance, by giving you time and space and choice, you might come to accept him on your own terms. What about his promise? Eowyn whispered. He said if I healed the boy, he would release us. That was before the bond formed. Marin's voice was gentle but firm. No promise can override a claiming. Your fates are now intertwined whether either of you wished it or not. Eowyn pressed her hands to her face, her mind reeling. And now? What has the partial bond done to him? Marin was silent for a long moment. It is killing him. The words drove Eowyn from the bed, her legs trembling beneath her. Explain, she demanded. Explain everything. A partial bond is unstable. Marin's voice was clinical, detached, as if distance could protect her from the horror of what she was describing. It tears at both parties, demanding completion. For a human, the effects are painful, but survivable. For a shifter, especially an alpha. What? Eowyn grabbed Marin's arm. What happens to him? His wolf is trying to reach you. Every moment you are apart, it grows more desperate, more feral. If the bond is not completed or severed, his human mind will eventually be consumed. Marin met her eyes steadily. He will become nothing but beast. And then, he will die. Eowyn's legs gave way. She collapsed to the floor, the hollow ache in her chest suddenly making terrible sense. How long? She whispered. Days. Perhaps a week, if he is strong. And if I complete the bond? If I accept the claiming? Then you will be bound to him forever. Body, blood, and soul exactly as he described. You will share his life force, his power, his fate. Marin crouched beside her. You will never be fully human again. Eowyn stared at the fire, watching the flames dance and twist. Somewhere in this fortress, Theron was fighting a battle she could not see, suffering a torment she had unknowingly caused. Take me to him, she said. The Alpha forbade. Take me to him, or I will tear this fortress apart stone by stone until I find him myself. Marin studied her with searching eyes. Then, slowly, she nodded. Follow me. The Alpha's chambers lay at the heart of Verath Keep, behind doors carved with wolves so lifelike they seemed to breathe. Eowyn heard him before Marin even touched the handle. A sound that was half growl, half moan, the noise of something in terrible pain trying desperately not to scream. A fist closed around her lungs at the sound. He ordered the guards away 2 days ago, Marin murmured. He did not want anyone to witness his decline. Open the door. Once you enter, I cannot guarantee your safety. His wolf may not recognize you. He may attack before his human mind can intervene. Open the door, Marin. The older woman studied her, then nodded. She pressed her palm against the carved wood, and the doors swung inward on silent hinges. The chamber beyond was destroyed. Furniture lay in splintered ruins. Tapestries hung in shreds from the walls. Deep gouges marked the stone floor, the marks of claws far larger than any natural wolf. And in the center of the devastation, curled in on himself like a wounded animal, was Theron. He was caught somewhere between forms. His body rippled and shifted constantly, human skin giving way to silver fur before reforming again. His hands were claws. His face was a mask of agony, features distorting between man and beast with each ragged breath. Theron. Eloin stepped into the room, ignoring Marin's warning hiss. His head snapped toward her. For one terrible moment she saw nothing human in those golden eyes. Only hunger, only desperation. Only the feral need of a creature being torn apart from the inside. Then recognition flickered, and a sound escaped him that might have been her name. Eloin. His voice was shattered, barely recognizable. You should not be here. I had to come. She moved closer despite every instinct screaming at her to run. Marin told me what is happening, what I did to you. Not your fault. Each word seemed to cost him immense effort. The bond. It recognized you. I could not stop it. Eloin knelt before him, close enough to touch but holding herself back. Up close she could see the toll the partial bond had taken. His skin was ashen, his body trembling with constant micro-shifts, his eyes flickering between gold and gray like a dying flame. There must be something I can do, she said. Some way to help you without. There is. Theron's hand shot out, clawed fingers wrapping around her wrist with surprising strength. You can leave. Take your sister. Go back to your village and forget you ever saw me. And let you die? Better that than. He released her abruptly, curling away as another wave of pain crashed through him. When it passed, his voice was barely a whisper. Better that than trap you in a bond you never wanted. Eloin felt tears burning in her eyes. You would rather die than bind me against my will? I would rather die than become the monster you already believe me to be. He looked at her then, and beneath the agony, she saw something that stole her breath. Love, pure and desperate and utterly consuming. I have killed men, Eloin. I have torn throats and broken bodies and bathed in the blood of my enemies. But I will not take from you something you do not freely give. The words struck her like arrows, each one finding its mark in the walls she had built around her heart. What if I want to give it? Theron went still. Even his constant shifting paused, his body freezing mid-transformation. You do not know what you are saying. I know exactly what I am saying. Eloin reached out, cupping his face between her palms despite the claws, despite the fur that sprouted and retreated beneath her touch. I have spent my entire life hiding, pretending to be something I am not, terrified that if anyone saw the real me they would run screaming. Eloin. But you saw me. Her voice cracked. From the very first moment you saw what I was, and you did not run. You did not call me witch or demon or monster. You called me interesting. A sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sob. I called you mine, he whispered. In my heart, from the moment I scented you in that square, you were mine. Even when you challenged me, even when you feared me, even when you had every reason to hate me. I do not hate you. The admission felt like releasing a breath she had been holding for weeks. I do not think I could hate you if I tried. Theron's eyes searched her face, looking for something. Doubt, perhaps, or deception. But her gift worked both ways, and she knew he could sense the truth in her words, just as surely as she could sense the truth in his. If we do this, he said slowly, there is no going back. You will feel what I feel, know what I know. Share my life force until death claims us both. I understand. You will no longer be fully human. I never was. She smiled despite her tears. My grandmother told me once that our bloodline carried wolf blood from centuries past. Perhaps this was always my fate. Theron stared at her as if she had offered him water in the desert. You would choose me? His voice was wondering, disbelieving. Knowing what I am, what we would become together. I choose you. The words felt like a vow. Body, blood, and soul. I choose you, Theron. His form stabilized, the constant shifting finally stilling as his wolf recognized the promise in her words. He rose to his feet, towering over her, more man than beast now, but still radiating power that made the air itself tremble. "There is one more thing you should know," he said quietly. "What?" "The claiming bond requires a bite." His eyes held hers steadily. "I must mark you, and you must mark me, both willingly given, both freely received." Eloin's hand moved instinctively to her throat. "Will it hurt?" "Yes." He did not soften the truth. "But only for a moment. And then—" "And then?" Theron cupped her face in hands that were fully human again, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "And then, you will never be alone again. Not for as long as we both draw breath." Eloin looked into his golden eyes and made her choice. "Then claim me, Alpha King. Make me yours." Theron's kiss was not gentle. It was the kiss of a man who had been starving, who had been dying, and who had finally been offered salvation. His mouth claimed hers with desperate hunger, his hands tangling in her hair, his body pressing her backward until her shoulders met the stone wall. Eloin responded with equal fervor, all her fear and uncertainty burning away in the heat of his touch. She had spent her whole life being careful, being cautious, and hiding the truth of what she was. Now, finally, she let herself burn. "Wait." Theron pulled back, his chest heaving, his eyes molten gold. "Before we do this, I need you to understand what will happen. The claiming is not just physical. When I bite you, when you bite me, our souls will touch. You will see everything I am. Every memory, every sin, every dark corner of my heart. And you will see mine." "Yes." His hands trembled against her face. "Can you bear that? Knowing that I will see the things you have hidden even from yourself?" Eloin thought of her mother's death, the night she had poured every ounce of her healing power into a body already too far gone, and felt it slip away regardless. The guilt she had carried ever since, the secret belief that if she had been stronger, faster, better, she might have saved her. "I can bear it," she said. "If you can." A look of reverence crossed his features. "My brave truth speaker," he murmured. "My perfect mate." He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a demand. His lips traced down her jaw, her throat, finding the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder. "This will hurt," he warned against her skin. "I am sorry." "Do not be sorry." Eloin tilted her head back, offering herself to him completely. "Just do not let go. Never." His teeth sank into her flesh. Pain exploded through her body, sharp and bright and absolute. Eloin heard herself cry out, felt her knees buckle, would have fallen if Theron's arms had not caught her and held her upright. But even as the pain reached its peak, it began to transform. Heat flooded through her veins, golden and wild, and suddenly she could feel him. Not just his body against hers, but his soul pressed against her own. She saw his memories, a boy of 7, watching his father fall in battle against Southern soldiers, a young man of 20, taking the crown he never wanted because there was no one else, a king of 30, standing over the ashes of a village and swearing vengeance against those who had slaughtered his people. And beneath it all, running through every memory like a river of light, she felt his loneliness. The bone-deep isolation of a man who had been set apart from the moment of his birth, who had been taught that an alpha must be strong, must be cold, and must never let anyone close enough to hurt him, until her. She felt the moment he had first scented her in the market square. The shock of recognition that had nearly driven him to his knees, the desperate hope that had warred with the certainty that she would never accept him. Tears streamed down Eloin's face as his teeth withdrew, as his tongue lapped gently at the wound he had made. "Now you," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "complete the bond." He tilted his head, baring his throat to her in the ultimate gesture of trust. The Alpha King, the most powerful shifter in the Northern Territories, offering his most vulnerable place to a woman he had known for mere weeks. Alawan rose on her toes, pressing her lips to the curve of his neck. She could feel his pulse racing beneath her mouth, could taste the salt of his skin, and could sense his desperate hope through the bond that now connected them. "I see you," she whispered. "All of you. Every shadow, every scar, every secret. And I am not afraid." Then she bit down. His blood flooded her mouth, hot and sweet and crackling with power. The bond between them flared like a sun going supernova, and suddenly she was not just seeing his memories, but living them. She was 7 years old, watching her father die. She was 20, feeling the weight of a crown settle onto her head. She was 30, standing over ashes and swearing vengeance. And then she was herself again, but not only herself. She was Elowen and Theron, two souls intertwined so completely that she could no longer tell where she ended and he began. When she finally released him, they stood trembling in each other's arms, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. "I feel you," Theron whispered, wonder saturating every syllable. "Inside my heart, inside my soul, you are everywhere." "As are you." Elowen laughed, the sound bright with joy she had never expected to feel. "Is this what it is always like? This completeness?" "I do not know." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes, and she saw tears tracking down his cheeks. "There has never been a bond like ours. A truth speaker and a wolf king. A healer and a warrior. We are something entirely new." Elowen reached up to brush away his tears, marveling at the intimacy of the gesture. Through their bond she felt his love for her, vast and deep as an ocean. And she felt her own love answering, rising to meet his like a tide. "Ellie?" Brielle's voice came from the doorway. Elowen turned to see her sister standing in the threshold, Marin behind her, both wearing expressions of cautious hope. "Is it done?" Brielle asked. Are you staying?" Elowen looked at Theron, at this impossible man who had captured her with a single glance in a dusty market square, who had seen her truth and treasured it instead of fearing it, who had been willing to die rather than take her choice away. "Yes," she said, and felt the word resonate through their bond, felt Theron's joy answering her own. "We are staying." Brielle launched herself across the room, wrapping her arms around both of them simultaneously. Theron stiffened for just a moment before relaxing into the embrace, his hand coming up to rest gently on the girl's hair. "Does this mean I get to live in a castle?" Brielle demanded, her voice muffled against their chests. "With wolves? Real wolves that I can pet?" "You may pet any wolf who consents to it," Theron said solemnly, but Elowen could feel his amusement rippling through their bond. "And I can learn to fight? With swords and everything?" "If your sister permits it." Brielle pulled back, turning pleading eyes on Elowen. "Ellie, please? I promise I will be careful." Elowen sighed, but she was smiling. "We will discuss it. Later." Marin stepped forward, and Elowen was surprised to see the older woman's eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The bond is complete," Marin said. "I can feel it. The whole fortress can feel it. The Alpha's mate has been claimed." "His mate?" Elowen tested the word, finding that she liked the weight of it on her tongue. "I suppose I have a great deal to learn about what that means." "You have a lifetime to learn it." Theron caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "And I will be beside you for every moment." Through their bond, Elowen felt the truth of his promise, felt his commitment, his devotion, and his absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. 3 months later, Elowen stood on the balcony of Verath Keep, watching the sun set over the mountains. So much had changed since that day in the market square when she had spoken a single word and altered the course of her entire existence. Corvain had been found 3 weeks after the battle, hiding in a southern monastery. The wolves had dragged him back to Verath Keep, where Theron had kept his promise. Elowen had not watched, but she had felt her mate's grim satisfaction through their bond when justice was finally served. She had learned the ways of the wolf clans, their customs and traditions, their fierce loyalty, and their ancient magic. She had trained with Marin to control the new powers that the claiming bond had awakened within her. She had healed dozens of injured shifters, discovering that her gift worked even more powerfully now that it was intertwined with Theron's wild energy. And she had fallen more deeply in love with her mate with each passing day. Arms wrapped around her from behind, warm and strong and familiar. "You are thinking too loudly," Theron murmured against her ear. "I can feel your mind racing from across the fortress." Elowen leaned back into his embrace, smiling. "I was thinking about the day we met. How terrified I was. How certain I was that you were going to kill me. I was certain I was going to claim you on the spot and scandalize the entire village." His laugh vibrated through her. "The restraint I showed that day should be legendary." "Restraint?" She turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. "You threw me on your horse and carried me away to your mountain fortress." "Exactly. Restraint." His eyes glinted with humor. "I could have done far worse. You could have done far better. You could have, I do not know, introduced yourself, asked my name, tried a conversation. Where's the romance in that?" Elowen laughed, rising on her toes to kiss him. Through their bond, she felt his contentment, his joy, his absolute certainty that this, right here, was exactly where he was meant to be. "I love you," she said when they parted. "I know I do not say it often enough, but I do. I love you, Theron." His eyes softened, gold giving way to gray. "And I love you, my truth speaker, my mate, my heart." From somewhere below, Brielle's laughter rang out, accompanied by the excited yips of young wolves at play. Elowen smiled at the sound, at this life she had never expected, at this family she had somehow stumbled into. "Any regrets?" Theron asked, reading her thoughts as easily as she read his. Elowen looked out over the mountains, at the wild landscape that had become her home. She thought of the village she had left behind, the life of hiding and fear that she would never have to return to. She thought of her mother, who had died with her secret still locked inside her, never knowing the freedom of being truly seen. "None," she said firmly. "Not a single one." Theron held her closer, and together they watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She had called the Alpha King a liar, and he had answered by teaching her the greatest truth she had ever known. Love was not a cage. Love was coming home.